recording right now. So basically, the way this is going to work, I'm going to do a separate segment where I'm introducing you. I have your biography, so I'm going to do that separately. And I think the conversation will have 3 parts, maybe 4, depending on how we go. And then it's basically going through the book, right? So I read the book, and then I'll have some follow-ups. So part 1 will be more about like an introduction, so your origins, life back home. We're going to touch on the lottery as well. Exactly. We're going to touch on the lottery and a few other stuff. Then we'll also touch on your military service. And I got some questions based on the book as well. And then also the last part will be about, those conversations we had with strangers. Like also talk about maybe racism in America from your perspective as an African immigrant living in racism. And then the final point will be, if you have any other material out there that people should look out for, and then we'll touch on that. There you go. So just keep that ready. Towards the end, we're gonna have to put that there. So yeah. So basically, welcome to Side Note. Welcome to Side Note Fireside. So Fireside is our different format of Side Note. So Side Note, we have the podcast, which is normally an hour of 30 minutes to an hour long, right? And we thought about coming up with another segment called Fireside, where we can have a longer exchange with guests who have who are authors or have any business ventures that require more than a 60-minute segment. So that's what this is about. So Cyrille, thank you again for joining the show. Before we start,
thank you for having me.
Could you just introduce yourself to our guests, who you are, where you're based, where you're from, and then we can take it from there.
So I'm Cyrille Mouna, a young Cameroonian immigrant living in the US, military veteran, spent 6 years serving. Come from Cameroon, Yaoundé, more precisely. I was born in Limbe. And yeah, shout out to my Limbe guys, by the way. So yeah. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
And you're an author. You're an author.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll start from the beginning. So you talked about being a Cameroonian. So how long did you stay in Cameroon before moving to the US?
Pretty much for all my life. I was born and raised in Cameroon and went through primary, secondary, school, and university. Then by the time I was 28, I immigrated to the US. So yeah.
All right. So you did 28, and what was the premise of living? So in our first season we talked about leaving home and basically going, and we kind of touched on the couple of reasons people leave, right? So we have education or work or family. So what was your reason for saying, you know what, I'm gonna have to go try my luck elsewhere?
So it was a combination of a bit of everything. Seeking greener pastures, seeking education, trying to join my family over here. I have family members over here who made over 30 years in the US. And, I have a huge family. Yes, I have a huge family out here in the US. Yes. So, and I actually have an uncle who was coming here like way back in the day, like prior to independence and stuff. They were part of the first batch of, Africans that were sent to Canada, Europe, USA to study.
Okay.
And yeah, his own experiences with racism were pretty tough compared to now. Like you couldn't walk on the same side of the street, with them folks. Yeah, you couldn't drink from the same fountain, like back in the civil rights days. Yeah, 65. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then that I would say then having family probably helped you when you got there to settle in. You were not like in no man's land, I would suppose then, contrary to most people. So in the book you talked about how the lottery was your ticket or your gateway to get into the US. And something that really stood out to me was that you said you tried it for 10 years.
Sure.
Right,
Sure.
and that didn't and you still continue. You didn't lose faith in that, and you kept doing that. So, for those who don't understand what the American lottery system, could you explain that to them first before we touch on the other part? Yeah.
So it's some type of immigration choisie, like the French say or the Canadians say. So it's like um, it's work based or study based on a certain background and profile. So they need skilled workers, they need educated people. It's some sort of a selection process. They choose through some type of a lottery, which is done automatically, and they select people with at least a high school background. So another little anecdote that I didn't put in the book, but that's behind the motivation behind that was a love interest. I had a love interest who came here through the lottery. By then, she was like part of the last batch who did it on paper. It was paper based before the internet and before it was done on computer and stuff. So yeah, she had come to the US. I was trying to join her. I didn't even so for 10 years I was trying to join my love interest, my heart. That's why I kept up the hope. Yeah, and eventually I came, but she had moved on 10 years. It's not 10 days, but yeah, that was part of the motivation behind the whole
Wow.
venture. Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, the things you do for love, right? I suppose.
Right, right.
But okay, so you talked about the fact that it's they need skilled workers and immigration choisie, so
Hmm.
immigration by choice.
Hmm.
What were the type of like documents you had to prepare to submit to this? And when you talked about an automatic system, so does
Hmm.
that mean that there was nobody at the back end of this process? It was a computer generated random selection that was going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So how they present the rules is it's a random selection done by a computer. So it's computer based, and so it's like two phases. The first phase is that random selection. Then the second phase will be now to check that and make sure and ensure that you meet the requirements. Like you have at least a high school diploma, you pass the background checks, you pass the medical checks. So there's layers, there's parts to it. Yeah, it's a process.
Do they also check like your financial backing as well? So do you have the money to survive, or is that something that you have to figure out afterwards?
So with them, they required like a minimum at the time, and basically they wanted to find out if you could pay your flight ticket, and it was basically a one-way ticket because then you're immigrating and they're expecting you to come here and work hard and to be able to cover you know the cost at the back end. So yeah,
Right.
there's
And
there's
then
yeah the minimum requirement.
another thing you said in the book was that the what's the word you used? You used an anecdote to explain that when you got there for the first time at the security check-in in the US, and he was asking you why you were here, and I think he asked you how much you had on you, and you told him how much you had on you, which he
Yeah,
thought was a lot of money, and
right,
his look on his face kind of made you understand that there's work to be done. So
right.
what was it like that first couple of months when you just arrived and being smacked with that reality?
It was rough, to be honest, because regardless if you have family here or not, they have bills to pay. So when you're coming, you're not expected to have like a free meal or anything. You're not expected to be freeloading. You have to contribute. So that was one reality. In Cameroon, you can have family come over. You don't expect anything from them. But in this society, in this economy, you can't function that way. And that was one of the first realities that hit me. So you could maybe say maybe let's say 1,000,000 francs in Cameroon, and you come here, it's just what, $500 maybe.
Yeah, it's not
So
the
you're
same.
like, you think you're a millionaire back home, but you come here and no, that's nothing. So yeah,
I can relate to that. When I left for the UK, I was working, right? So I'd saved like 2 point something million in my savings. So I'm like, I'm 23. I'm a millionaire. I'm gonna take this and go over there. And then I think I remember my tuition was 8 grand
wow,
pounds, right?
wow.
And that 2 million looked like 200 francs, like when you compare it
Mhm.
to what it actually did. But something you trust about as well is like, in Cameroon, you can basically go to a friend, a family, and you're sorted. That sense of community clearly isn't what's happening in Europe, right? In your experience, does that hurt us, or which does that hurt us as immigrants who are going there, or does it hurt the society in Europe where there's this more of this individualistic aspect from a societal point of view?
Honestly, with regards to this, it's like there's no clear-cut answer. I won't
Mm.
say, I'll say there's pros and cons to everything, So it really depends. That works for us back home in Africa, in the African setting, and it might
Yeah.
not work here. So it's just about adapting to your environment. So yeah, it really depends. And I'm not for or against. I
Or
can't
against it.
speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll
Yeah.
just say whatever works. Yeah.
Okay. And when you got there for the first time, like when you got there, so for example, I'm trying to compare this with the Canadian system where they have their PR system where people go in for permanent residence. There is like a body, an organization that would welcome you and help you settle in, find a job, etc. Did that exist for you, or were you literally on your own the moment you got off that plane?
I was literally on my own the moment I got on the plane.
Wow.
And that's why they ask you like who are you gonna stay with? And that's their own way, of like having that safety net. Like, okay, like do you have an address? Do you know where you're going?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the basics for them.
Okay.
And of
Okay.
course you sort yourself out and it works
Wow.
out.
So it's basically not for anyone who is not hardworking shouldn't try this, you would say, because you have to put in the
Hmm.
work.
Hmm.
Going back a little bit, like just taking a few steps back, another thing you talked about the book was when you were selected by the automatic system, you still had to go through an interview at the embassy,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
even in at that process, it's not guaranteed that you would make it to the US, right? So what was that process like for you? And I remember you mentioned in the book that you kind of told them that your dream was to work for the military, which is something we'll touch on in the future.
Hmm.
So what was it like for you? And do you think that that was the deciding element about your interview with those guys because you showed that interest or took the initiative?
So I guess it's just standard procedure for them to interview everybody trying to get on their territory, like trying to get into the US. It's standard procedure, whether
Yeah.
it's for studies, for a visit, for a touristic visa, they'll have an interview with you because the paperwork is all set. But they
Mm-hmm.
want that human element. They want to look at you in your eyes and talk
Yeah.
with you and have a sense of direction that you have and what are your intentions basically. So I was a young guy, trying to live my dream, trying to pursue my studies,
Mm-hmm.
try to fulfill my dream of being in the military, like you rightly mentioned. And so, yeah, I was just honest with them and we just had a conversation. Yeah.
Right. So let me play devil's advocate here. What do you say
Mhm.
to people who say, if you're from another country, be it Cameroon or Nigeria, right,
Mhm.
and you
Mhm.
want to fight for another military, and because I have a mate who used to be at the military in the UK,
Mhm.
he was a sniper, so he had some cool stories to tell us. But some people will criticize that and say, well, why don't you fight for your own country? Why would you want to
Mhm.
fight for another country? What would you say to such folks who would think that, you know, you're kind of like quote unquote selling out yourself to a new like country.
So it's about ideals and principles. Like honestly, like the American dream, like that's a perfect selling point right there.
Mhm,
I wasn't
mhm.
even American and I was already trying to dream about the American dream. You see what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's how you sell it. Like back home, unfortunately, there's still a lot of corruption. You need to be connected to be in certain spheres and stuff like that. But here, the process is pretty much free and fair. So you
mhm.
work hard, you earn it, you get it, and that's what I aspired to. So that's what
Right.
motivated me. I may love my country of origin and everything. As you can see, I rock both nations. Like,
I
yeah, that's
noticed
my
on your
DNA
hoodie,
right
yeah.
there. So but yeah, certain things are not ideal, and we try to we try to aspire for better, for more, because I believe we can be better, we can be more. So yeah, so
One of the
that was
things
part of the motivation.
something you just mentioned, which really stood out to me, which I think I agree with, is the reward. I think in Europe it's more of a reward-based system, right? So if you
Yes,
put in the work, you get the outcome. And
yeah.
but to what degree do you think assimilation plays a part into it? So what do I mean by that? In some cases, we have folks who come over, and they're still stuck in their ways. What does that mean? So they don't try to integrate the community they're in. If it's, let's say you're in Germany, learn the language, learn the culture. So how much of a factor does that play in whatever pursuit of success or happiness we as Africans going abroad? How does that influence us in terms of how the assimilation factor? How important is that?
I think we are pretty open to the world, although we are rooted in our roots and our traditions and our customs, just like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is, you need to adapt. Adaptability is a major factor in like helping you to settle in your new environment, helping you to make it. You have to adapt. But while adapting, don't forget yourself. Don't become invisible. Don't erase yourself because you bring something to the table. We have our own flavor, our own spirituality, our own way of seeing the world. Our joie de vivre. Like we have that in us. You can't leave your fiber. We have our own feeling, our own vibe. So yeah, we can adapt, but we bring that little element, that little touch, that flavor. And that's what makes the world colorful and beautiful. I believe in just being yourself and adapting to your environment. So it's a blend for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have you had that experience where you had to, for lack of a better word, like act American and not African?
I mean, kid you not, believe it or not, the good thing about the US, despite all the issues, is it's a melting pot. There's a lot of diversity in here.
Okay.
Some parts of that diversity don't want to accept the other diversity coming in, but it's here. And that's the good thing. So you don't have to be someone else. You really don't, unless you want to.
Okay.
And a lot of the younger ones who come behind us, or those who are born here, they don't know much about where they come from, their roots. So they act
Yeah.
all, fully in the system and everything. But it's
Okay.
good to remind them of that they have a rich heritage.
Yeah, and
So
I think that also kind of gives you an extra push, right? So
yes,
like you and I, we grew up in Yaoundé, right? We
yes,
understand that hustle. So when things get
Ebola.
tough here, exactly. When things get tough
Yeah,
here, you're like, nah, I've seen worse. Like I've been in situations where, you know,
absolutely.
we've really struggled. So this is probably it's hard, but I'm sure I'm gonna make it through.
Yes.
Um, Another thing I wanted to touch on is that you did mention that you studied
Hmm.
uh, while you were over there. So was that before joining the military, or was that side by side with the military?
So it was side by side, simultaneously. So the program I went in for was a tuition for service program
Oh, okay.
where you were a full-time student. You needed a certain GPA to qualify for the tuition assistance from them. So
Okay,
they
so they
basically
covered
give
the
you,
tuition.
yeah. So it's like a scholarship, rewards-based system type scholarship. You had to be in good standing with your unit. You had to pass your PT test. You had to maintain the army standards.
Hmm.
So one weekend a month, you come, you serve, you do your drills. Most of the drills were, just like physical exercises, like getting paid to do PT. You know,
Nice.
and I discovered a passion for you know for doing everything military, which was already
Okay.
there. Then it
Yeah.
was reaffirmed and confirmed that that's what I really love doing. So
Super. I mean, come
yeah,
on, the lifestyle in Yaoundé probably helped you in this whole thing, like
yeah,
playing the soccer and carrying those bucket of waters every day. There
absolutely.
is,
Before going to school, you get up at
yeah,
like what 5 4 a.m. You go carry some water before
some
you go to
water,
school.
yeah, yeah. So that's
So
already
yeah,
your cardio sorted.
yeah,
There is a story that stood out to me. I think you were talking about a friend of yours who was a nurse.
yes,
And this again, guys, I'm just talking to the audience. Like we always talk about being able to see opportunities in situations that may not be so, green. Could you just tell the story for the audience? I think you had a friend who was a nurse, and he noticed that food was being thrown away, and decided to do something about it in a way to make ends meet. So maybe you can just narrate that briefly for our
yeah,
audience. Yeah.
sure. So this dude was like from PE like us, and
Mhm.
back home some people don't even have the opportunity to have 1 square meal a day.
Yeah.
So he came here. He was working at the cafeteria. and he noticed all these burgers being thrown at the end of the day. He was like, why waste so much good food? You know? So at the end of the day, he started collecting them, and like, instead of selling them for $5, he started selling them for $1 at this place he was living at temporarily, this temporal, accommodation he had.
Accommodation,
'Cause
yeah.
I don't want to say he was homeless, but that's a reality here too that I came to be shocked about, that there's a lot of homelessness out here.
Yeah.
That's something that, is not seen on TV a lot, but yeah, that's another reality here. So he came, he had nobody, so he had to sort himself out, and that's the Yaoundé spirit, the
Mindset,
Ogola
yeah.
spirit, the hustling spirit.
Exactly, because you went on to say the dream is free, but the hustle is sold separately, which is very
Yes.
true. So I
Yeah.
think I think some people, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, some people always have this idea that, once you're fallen bush, I mean, guys, fallen bush means going abroad. You're
Mm-hmm.
just gonna walk around and they're just gonna be throwing your money in your body and you'll be living the best life, which is far from the far
That's
from
true.
the
That's not true.
and and the reason why I really like that story was because here was somebody who, obviously was still trying to get his footing in his new surrounding, but was able to make use of his what others would call predicament into something that would at least help him, get out of his situation. And I think that's the ingenuity, I would say, that African experts seem to display every time they're faced with hard
Difficult.
choices. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so too. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was really I can relate, not directly, but I've been in situations when I just came to the UK to study where, you know, we used to do these main jobs, and the agency calls you when there was a job, and there'll be a week or two and you don't get a call. So you
Mm-hmm.
either sit on your butt and complain, or go out and look for another way of making money,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so you get quite creative with that as well. So yeah, okay. So I think we've understood like the genesis of this, why you got here, the lottery, because it's my understanding that the lottery still goes on till today, right? People still apply for this. So I
Yes.
think I think some guys back home might find that information useful, and also there's a sentiment, at least when I talk to other experts, at least here in Germany, it's a sentiment that the word sacrifice get thrown around a lot. So what do I mean by that? I was fortunate to go home for Christmas this last Christmas, and I do know that there are folks who would be abroad for 20, 15 years and they're not able to go home.
Sure.
And so when I talk to these guys, they always use the word, the sacrifice we're making to be here sometimes isn't worth it, in terms of like not having something to show for. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it is in the US because I've never been to the US. But first of all, one, do you agree with that phrase that we are sacrificing a lot more? Obviously, what we get in return is entirely up to us, right? But the sacrifice is quite immense, and I think, should we acknowledge that? Does that help us in acknowledging that, or do we just focus on getting the job done, and we will see each other at the finish line?
Well, I agree that there's a lot of sacrifice. It entails a lot of sacrifice, to leave everything like your loved ones back
Mhm.
home, your lifestyle, and come here, and you're basically like a bolt in the machine. It's métro boulot dodo, like you're just
Yeah.
on the grind. So yeah, many people, they say they sacrifice, and I can quantify that, like in terms of like maybe your youth, your energy, because most people come here and they spend so many years working, and by the time they want to lift up their head, they're older, and
Yeah.
maybe they haven't engaged in family. They haven't spent much time with their family, or other ventures. So I do understand when some people complain, like they feel like they're sacrificing a lot, but at
Hmm.
the same
Hmm.
time, it's all about motivation, like, because you put in so much energy, you put in so much of yourself, so you have no other choice but to make it. So that's
Mm.
how I see it. Yeah.
So just to follow up on that, we'll talk about that in the last segment. But do you think that, because the pattern I've seen is that us, so African expats who go abroad anywhere in the world,
Hmm.
we tend to have an extra drive, which our actual, let's say, native or African Americans, or Black Germans and Black British sometimes seem to lack. And what's your perspective for that? Do you see that? And do you think it's because of like you said, that mindset of like, I came here for something and I'm not gonna stop no matter what?
Well, I've seen a lot of PhDs driving Lyfts and Ubers. PhD students,
Wow.
doctoral students driving Lyfts and Uber part time. So yeah, there's that spirit of hustling. You're going to school and you need money. You have nobody, so it's like your back is to the wall. You have no other choice but to move forward. And that's just what drives them, because they have tuition to pay, they have air tickets to pay, they have family back home calling them, asking them for money, school fees, education, medical bills and stuff. So
A lot of
yeah,
burden.
you have a lot of responsibility. So that extra responsibility gives you that extra drive. I think it's just due to your own life experiences. That's my take on it. I'm not gonna judge
Oh yeah, sure. No, no.
our brethren, like, oh, maybe they have less drive, or their circumstances might take their own,
Completely different. Yeah. Yeah.
out into life. But this is our reality. We have a lot of responsibility. We come here, we are humble, we want to work, we just want to make it, no trouble, just lay low, do your thing, help your family. Because it's like, your family back home is counting on you, right? You're the champion maybe of your village. You have a whole village backing you up.
Yeah.
So your motivation is different.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
something we always say here. It's like, we come if we look at life in Europe as a football game, we are the visiting team, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
we have to focus on our side of the pitch and not care about what the home team is doing, because they have a different
Absolutely.
set of circumstances, right?
Yes,
And
sir. Yeah.
that's exactly what we got to do to continue
I agree.
succeeding. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to jump into the military. I have got a lot of
Mhm.
questions regarding your military service. So
Yeah.
you said you were there for 6 years,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
You explained to us why, because you've had that with you even before coming to the US. You've been there. Can you just walk us through the process of finally getting enlisted? What does it take to, like, where do you start, and what's the process like to become part of the US military, in the United States?
So there's what they call the ASVAB. It's a test. So it's like for all the branches, regardless of the branch you're joining, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, the Army, any
Hmm.
branch you're trying to join, you have to write the ASVAB. So it's like a test. There's math, there's English, there's general knowledge, there's mechanics. So you have to study for that test. And depending on your scoring, you'll be placed in a certain job or not.
Right.
So it's like an IQ test that you do, which determines your placement in the military. And most people in the US, they don't do secondary, they don't do post secondary education. They don't go to university. They end at high school.
Oh,
So
really?
a lot of the people that join the military are joining straight from high school. And the economy is made in such a way that they view higher education a bit like a waste of time. They would rather do technical education. They would rather do something to make money real quick. They want to
Yeah, so
start earning
skill
money,
based. Yeah.
skill based. So yeah, we Africans, we study a lot. We have master's degrees, PhDs and stuff. No, these cats don't do that.
All right.
So yeah, I had to do the ASVAB. So I scored pretty high because of course I was in university. So once you score high, now you have to do height and weight, you have to do background checks, you have to do physical exams, medical exams. So it's pretty much all over the same selection process, with maybe a
Hmm.
little bit more strict, as when I had the green card interview at the embassy. So I had to go through something similar
Okay.
before I could go through the process. Yeah. And
And so in terms of, like, so let's say you get your grades, you do the PT exams and everything.
mhm.
Before you get enlisted, I'm pretty sure there's some sort of camp where you guys go on and test like your physical aptitude, right, or something like that. And I remember you said something about you being with a mate and traveling to this camp and not being successful, and you had to walk all the way back, right, to
Well,
find a
yeah,
way
that
back home.
was
Yeah.
right. That was officer school. So I was already in the military for
Oh,
like
so you were
four
inside.
four
Okay.
years.
Okay.
Yeah. And I
Okay.
was in another selection process to be an officer.
Okay.
Yeah,
And which branch of the military were you in actually?
I was in the Boston National Guard.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice. Nice.
yeah, yeah.
What was it like those physical drill? Is it like in the movies? Like do they try to break you?
They do break you. They don't try. They break you. They break you. You do so many push-ups. Like you do push-ups prior to eating chow. So chow is like going to eat at the cafeteria.
Hmm.
So prior to chow, you do push-ups. After chow, you do push-ups. So you do push-ups at midnight. At night, they come wake you up randomly. You know,
Wow.
they do random inspections. They do random. It was interesting, and it makes you be in shape. It makes you
Okay.
get in shape real quick. Yeah.
To what degree did that help you in terms of you building your personality and your character? So when I look at things like the military or any other form of a field that requires that level of discipline, does that kind of shape your level of like responsibility and other criteria that you require to face the world? So what were some of the benefits to your person that you took out from your military experience?
Yeah, it's a confidence shaper because now you have to deal with all these cats from all over the country, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Alaska, wherever, Guam. It's really international, and they have a lot of people from France as well. There's some
Mm,
French people I saw out there. It was pretty diverse. Everybody was in my like in my shoes. Me
hmm.
coming from Cameroon, like you know, through the lottery program. These guys from France through the same lottery program. So we're
Okay.
all treated equal. Yeah. So we had to do the same task. We had, it makes you to be responsible and disciplined. It increases your level of responsibility because now you become like a team leader. It affirms your leadership skills. So
Right.
yeah, it helped me hone my leadership skills. Yeah. So
Cool,
I
cool.
had to take charge. I had to take charge, take control, and listen. You have to take charge and you have to listen to orders as well. So you have to be a team player. You know
Right.
when to step up and you know when to step down.
Step
So
down. Yeah.
it's all about the balance. So yeah, it helped me. Yeah, it helped shape my leadership skills. I would say, yeah.
No doubt, no doubt.
Mhm.
Were you guys ever deployed? Like, or was it just main? Did you ever go to other countries representing the US from during your time?
So I was kind of in a funny situation. By the time I was getting in, my unit was just coming back from Afghanistan,
Oh,
and when I was getting out, they were being deployed somewhere else. I think Cuba. So
lucky guy.
so I never got to go.
Okay, now that's
Yeah,
that's good to go. One
yeah,
thing you kind of mentioned was the fact that you guys were treated equal. So,
yeah.
the notion, again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but do you believe that, just hang on, someone's at the door, just 2 seconds, okay?
Sure. Good.
Hello, this, um, this is for Maria Villarreal. I don't know. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day. You too, bye. All right, sorry about that.
No worries.
We're gonna edit this part out. So yeah, I was just asking, like, you mentioned that you guys were treated equally. However, in the book, you also mentioned that there is still some degree of discrimination going on, within that service. Obviously, not something that is widespread, but it's still there, right? And my question is, what would be your advice to anyone who is currently either in the military, thinking about joining the military in the US, and has this concern? What would be your advice to them with regards to this issue?
So the army has pretty strict guidelines when it comes to equal opportunity, when it comes to fight against bias. They have good, very good text. But the thing is, some of the operatives don't follow those texts. They are
Okay.
who they are. They can't be changed. It's just like there's some rules and regulations and guidelines, and they in their core they really disdain those rules and regulations. But if you
Hmm.
go by the book, everybody should be treated equal. But then that's said, there's still some bias because there's still some people like we no
Yeah,
we,
yeah.
we
Like
don't believe in that.
they
So
still have
yeah,
those beliefs, those strong. Yeah.
Yeah. So my advice would just be to get in there, do your job, be open-minded, and always talk to a buddy, talk to someone when when you're confronted to an issue, because if you try to deal with it by yourself, it may not have the best outcome or the best
Mhm.
consequences. So there's a chain of command. Talk to your chain of command and lay your complaints to them. These are there are better ways of dealing with some of these issues, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So
Mhm.
guys, so basically don't run away from the issue. Go head on. Talk to
Yeah.
someone if you feel like you're not being treated fairly, and
Yeah.
basically follow the rules, as they're intended to.
Yeah.
Right. And so before we wrap up from this segment, could you tell us what was your best memories from being in the military, and what obviously was your worst moment or one of the not so good moments during your 6 year span within the military?
So we have this saying in the military that it's like I had my best worst experience in the military at the same time. So it's kind of funny. Um, Basic training was my best moment. Meeting the people I met, some of them my friends for life, and
Mm.
they come from all over the place. Very diverse, like I told you, very diverse crowd, and
Mm-hmm.
you have some of the best amongst them. But at the same time, in that same crowd, you had the worst of the worst.
Wow.
Like people who couldn't stand you. People tell you like, "Hey, I've not seen a person, an African American where I come from, somewhere in some county in Texas, somewhere lost out there." I'm like, really? They're like, yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, we had the best and we had the worst.
The worst.
It's all
Okay.
of it. Yeah.
So it's all about how you navigate those situations, right? I would suppose. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Cool, cool things. One story I did like about your book was in the segment Conversations with Strangers,
Yeah.
particularly the lady Adriana from Peru,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like her story emanates, a lot of people can relate to that as
Mm-hmm.
immigrants, So she,
Yeah.
coming in, probably being the first kid in the family to be in the US,
Mm-hmm.
doing what she had to do to provide for her siblings, and then her siblings going out and using the opportunity they got to become also successful in their field, and then choosing at the end to like, okay, I'm going to take my money and I'm going to travel the world. Now, I feel like most people don't do that last part. Most of our African brothers, we kind of
Yeah.
get stuck in the rat race and forget that the mind, the body also needs to be taken care of. So, it's been 6 years since the US. So how have you tried to live your life post the military service?
Mm-hmm. So there's a debate going on, and you know when we talk amongst ourselves, so like, yeah, you should take a vacation, bro. I mean, you can't be on the grind 24/7 for the past decade and not take a break. You need a break. And yeah, that's something definitely we need to be doing more of, like more traveling, more exploring. You know, I mean, all play. What's the saying? All play and
Oh, work without play,
all
make
work.
Jack a dull boy or something. Yeah.
You got it. So yeah, we need it. I agree. We do need it. People
Right.
need to make time for themselves, quality time for themselves and their families. Their loved ones.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the moment, what do you do right now at the moment post the military? Like, what exactly how is Siri keeping his time?
So post military, I kept up with something similar. So I did something still in law enforcement. Um, yeah, and that's how
That's how it
I
goes
got
right
to
now.
be
Yeah.
around the Capitol, and it's actually been 1 year anniversary of that Capitol riot. So I got to be around that.
I wanted to touch on that.
Mhm.
So now, again, you probably know this, but the
Mhm.
rest of the world looking at the US, sometimes we think you guys are crazy. We think you guys are. There's so much going on. Like so much everything
Right.
is sensationalized. Everything is like a groundbreaking, whatever. So the capital stuff. I think your current president and vice president made a speech about the event. Now you mentioned that you were there on the ground when that
Mhm.
happened. How bad was it?
Um, so thankfully I wasn't in the direct line of action, but
Hmm.
I was on duty in the vicinity,
Hmm.
and we had to later on come and back up, our colleagues. But it was really bad. Um, it was really bad. There were a lot of things happening all around that I really
Mhm.
can't talk about.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, I still have, that, j'ai le droit de la retenue. So
Ouais,
I still have
bien
that,
sûr, of course.
description, but it was really bad. It was bad. Yeah.
Because you mentioned in your book that as law enforcement, your job is to allow citizens to protest, right?
Yeah.
Irrespective of your political affiliations. So
Mhm.
if you're a left-leaning person and you want to go about protesting, you basically your job as a officer of the law is to basically facilitate that without interfering.
Mhm.
Although there is, from what you wrote in your book as well, violence is condemned on both sides. So you do not condone violence regardless of what side it happens.
Mhm.
Now, how does that play with you, as an African in the military force, as a black person, and sometimes, when these tragic events happen, with the police shooting, etc., and a multitude of other things happen, and you have fellow Africans or black people who are really showing your discontentment with what's happening, and in some cases they turn and attack you guys, right? So you who is black but still wearing the uniform and stuff. From a mental point of view, how do you guys deal with that? Because it's probably not easy to be able to still stand there and take all that, right? Because it's you're human at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's all about, just being professional, maintaining your professional bearings. You know, you could go home and complain. You could go home and vent. You could go home and do some exercise, go to the gym,
Mm,
but on the spur of the moment, you have to be professional. You have to be an example. So you have to be there and do your job
mhm.
in a professional manner. So that bottom line, that's it. Just stay professional.
Right.
That's just it. Yeah. Then you could deal with it there. You could talk to someone. You could express your frustration. But yeah, you just have to keep it professional, keep it moving.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I see some videos sometimes and I'm like, wow, like, you have someone like really like in your face and you have to show that composure, which again, I have so much respect for anybody who chooses to go and work
Mhm.
for the military. Now, as a citizen, so as yourself and your experience in the US,
Mhm.
is it safe to say then that obviously there is still, like every other part of Europe, there is still some degree of discrimination in wherever we go, right? Um, and I think it's all about how we choose to react to it as opposed to the existence of it. Based on your experience, what are some of the lessons you've learned so far in your stay in the US with regards to racism, with regards to this whole current climate we live in where everything is very heightened and very sensationalized?
Well, unfortunately, it's a debate that is still gonna be current as long as there's diversity.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, that's just bottom line my observation. Like what I think, um, it is. I mean, it is what it is, and
Yeah.
we just have to deal with it. As long as there will be diversity, there will always be those people who don't like diversity, and
I
there's
don't
nothing you
think though
can do
that these
about it.
guys are the majority. I don't think these are the majority. I
No,
mean,
they're
again,
not.
exactly. I think it's a small minority
They're
just
not.
making too much noise, right? I would think
Yeah,
so.
they're
Yeah.
definitely not. But they definitely take up a lot of air and
Hmm.
space. They pollute the environment wherever they are. They try and cause a lot of chaos,
Yeah.
and friction. That's what they are. They are agents of chaos, and wherever they are, they try and be as loud as possible. They try and make you feel uncomfortable. They try and throw in sneaky remarks. They try
Hmm.
and they just spill their venom. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. I
So
think
you
they're
just
more
have to be
like
immune to that. Yeah,
yeah,
just
more
have
like
to be immune.
disruptor. Yeah, disruptors, I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
All right. So my last question would be, well, not last question at least, but one of the closing question would be like when you wrote this, obviously it's a diary, obviously, right? But what were you hoping to achieve when you decided to publish this in terms of like your target audience?
So I realize we Africans, unfortunately, that's a stereotype, but we don't first of all like to read. They said the best kept secrets are in books. So if you want to
Yeah,
hide something from South
put it
Africa
in a
or
book.
Cameroonian, put it in a book. So I'm like, we should change that culture. So I'm trying to let us not just have the oratory tradition where, knowledge is passed down you know, from mouth to ear. Like, I heard this story, let's
Yeah,
write down our own accounts, because if you leave others to write our own accounts, it will be distorted. So
of
write it
course.
as you went through it. Like these are significant times. These are historic moments we're living in. So I'm like, okay, I've been through this experience. Maybe I might help somebody, inspire them. Like, hey, this is my experience. It might help you, maybe lessen your process, maybe speed up your process, maybe
Hmm.
encourage you in your process. So I'm like, okay, I've been through this. It took me 10 years to get the lottery. Maybe with your program, maybe with your scholarship program or student visa program, you might cut that time in half. And
Yeah.
that would be a plus for me to help others. It's
Hmm.
not just for
Hmm.
me, I wrote this. It's like for the aspiring ones who want to come behind. And there's this thing that they say, abroad is like a secret cult. You don't know what happens here until you come and join it.
Hmm.
So uh, I think information shouldn't be that obscured. Just information to help out others better their lives. And that was really my motivation to try and help people, encourage them in their procedure, in their process, the aspiring immigrants. That hey, it's possible. Just need to work hard. Work hard. That's it.
I think that's very noble. I think that, the idea that
Thank
we're
you.
kind of like giving back. I think that's
Hmm.
like you said, this whole idea that whatever happens in Europe should be like a secret behind curtains. I think that's
Yeah.
the same thing that gave birth to the podcast because I'm like, well, we've like when I came to the UK,
Mhm.
had I known what I knew, if someone had provided that to me beforehand, I would have prepared differently.
Right.
And then I checked the ecosystem in the UK. There's no platform that talks about African experts and their experience and how to go about it.
Mhm.
And then we thought, okay, let's create side note and then let's do it since no one is doing it. And I commend you for this book because I've recommended it to a couple of folks already.
Thank you.
Because again, things like this, books like this, kills that narrative, that
That
myth.
means yeah,
Yeah, and it's
yeah,
very important for us to
yeah,
kill that myth because
yeah.
our experience should be a blueprint for those coming behind us always. All right.
Yep.
So final question, and then we will talk about any upcoming project. I
Mm.
always ask my guests what the same question. So, what would be your advice to any African expert, either abroad or about to go abroad? What do you believe is the recipe for a successful life abroad as an expert?
I would say do your research. That's very important. If you can have a point of contact, that's even better. If you can save some money, that's awesome. You know, don't rush. Be prepared. Don't skip over any step. Don't don't cut any angles. Do your research. Save. And if possible, reach out and have a point of contact. That way, once you hit the ground, you just run. You hit the ground running. You know what you're heading to, what programs you're going for, and stuff like that. So yeah,
Okay,
information.
okay.
Yep.
So exactly,
Very important.
information is wealth, pretty much.
Yeah.
So you heard it here, guys. Do your research. If you're still to come abroad, save up. Have a point of contact. If you are already here, then if you've done the previous steps we talked about, then you hit the ground running. And I would say maybe just build a community, people who like a support system who would guide you through this because no man is an island. You need people in this world to be able to move forward. Sorry. So Cyril, thank you again so much for agreeing to talk to me. It is my understanding that you have another book.
Yeah.
So do you want to shed some light on that and where can people get it and what's the book about?
Sure. And before that, I just want to applaud you for your initiative. That's really commendable. Young
Thank you so
talented
much, brother.
artist. International. Icon. So keep up the good work, bro. Appreciate you.
No, thank you,
Um,
brother.
welcome, bro. So, um, the next I have is Gomindo, the Prince, Prince Gomindo. In French, it's Le Prince Gomindo. In
Okay,
English, it's Gomindo the Prince, and in French, Prince Gomindo. So
nice.
yeah, that's more of a folktale, traditional story. Um, my granddad used to tell us some stories, which I try to honor him and put down in writing. Because, like I
Okay.
said, we in Africa, we have a lot of oratory, history, so you get told stories from, from your ancestors, passed
And
down
then pass it
generation.
down. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we could write them that way, it stays and it could, help
It lives
edify.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, help
So are
enlighten
these
other
books,
generations.
are they already available on Amazon and all the other
Yes,
platforms? Okay.
yes, all of them are available on Amazon. This is the French version of Anecdotes,
Mm-hmm.
available on Amazon, and that's the English version. That's the French version.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
that's
the
the
English
English
version.
version.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's the French
English
version.
version, and that's the French. Yeah, all available on Amazon. Yep.
Okay, so what I will do, guys, I'll put the link at the description when we air the podcast, and feel free to check the books out. As you can clearly see, he's bilingual, so you can pick pick whatever you want. Again, we really I really appreciate what you're doing. I let's see, is it this year? No, next year. I'm hopefully gonna be in the US. We should
Awesome.
definitely meet up. And
Sure.
thanks again for taking out the time. I wish you nothing but success in all your future endeavors, and more grace to you, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You take
Merci. Bye.
care.